Story 1. I have worked with teenagers my entire career, and I am well versed in how mental illnesses can show up with middle and high school students. We had one student, let's call him Evan. I generally understand why kids are popular, but this student confused me. He was not charismatic in the hallway, not a partygoer, not athletic, not funny, and certainly not kind. This student always attracted attention and would pick one other male peer and essentially overwhelm him with excessive friendship. He built emotional bonds with them and then used those bonds for his benefit. He would pick a teacher and mercilessly torment them. For example, in creative writing class, he wrote about a character named Kevin who went to a teacher's house that had a dog similar to the teacher's. The character graphically tortured the dog, not killing it but torturing it. He would change details just enough and say he was mimicking Kurt Vonnegut. When he was disciplined, he had his favored male peer try to reason with the teacher. This friend ended up getting suspended because what he described as talking sense was actually threats to protect Evan. When the friend returned from suspension, his mother asked everyone to keep him away from Evan. Evan did not get in trouble because he believed this friend would not become aggressive, but he did. This behavior was constant, and eventually he was placed in my class. He tried the same tactic again with an essay. He wrote about a character not named Evan but almost identical, who knew where a teacher who sounded like me lived and planned to burn down my house with my entire family inside. The next day, I read the essay aloud to the class and asked them to give feedback together during class. He did not like this, especially because the girls, who had no prior knowledge of this situation, were horrified and labeled him a creep. He moved the following year and is now an adult. Occasionally, I search his name because I truly do not know what damage a person who operates that effectively can cause. Story 2. My former spouse was charming, charismatic, beautiful, manipulative, a pathological liar, and emotionally and financially abusive. I dropped her off at the hospital so she could take over watching her mother to give her aunt and uncle a reprieve. The aunt and uncle informed me that my mother-in-law was doing well. I drove home. She called me 20 minutes later to say her mother had suddenly died. She smothered her mother to death. After our divorce, I met with her stepmother and sister-in-law to talk about things. Unsolicited, they said they believed she smothered her mother. I nodded in agreement. Story 3. It took years for me to realize, but I eventually saw that they never spoke a single word that wasn't intended to manipulate and control others. Every conversation and interaction was manufactured and not genuine. No authentic version of that person exists. They also took every opportunity to subtly put people down if they felt threatened by them. This made people, including me, doubt ourselves deeply. Additionally, everything they did to control and manipulate others had plausible deniability because they were so clever and careful. Everything was done between the lines, making it hard to prove. Eventually, those people almost always give themselves away, in my opinion and experience. Story 4. I have a sibling who is a psychopath. They are just empty. They try one thing after another to fill the emptiness and may harm themselves or others when they cannot. There is an uncanny valley quality to them because of the emptiness. They do not respond in a normal or expected way to anything. They are cold, like someone doing an impression of a human. They are good at acting and putting on charm, but most people sense something is not right, something off and strange. Most of their relationships are entirely superficial. It is very much a you know it when you see it situation. You know in your bones something is wrong and your brain says, run. Even during a totally ordinary conversation. They have always been like this. They have just gotten better at acting to fool whoever they need to. Story 5. I used to work for one. Every sincere, vulnerable moment was fabricated to prompt me to share my story, so he could collect information to use against me. He used to get upset that he was so open with me and I was like a brick wall. Sir, I'm at work. He told me he used to live in London, his marriage was open, and he lined up dates on his business trips. He said he was romantically involved with his last assistant when they traveled together. He claimed to keep his parents on payroll to help them out and so on. None of it was true except for his blatant affairs. He would name-drop people of influence, saying so-and-so was an old friend, just compulsively lying to make himself seem important. He fabricated dramatic situations that were my fault, so he would have an excuse to scream literally at me, like wording a phrase just wrong enough that I would misstep. His eyes would go absolutely black. I started questioning when I met someone close to him in his personal life and asked, "Oh, was that when he lived in the United Kingdom?" I got coffee with his former assistant, and she told me she had never traveled with him, let alone had an affair with him. It was all a lie. I took screenshots of him making really obscene sexual comments towards me on Slack. Still not sure what to do with it all. Obviously, I don't work for him anymore. To say I had post-traumatic stress disorder would be dramatic, but the emotional whiplash of someone being manipulative and having power over you left me scarred in unexpected ways for a long time. Now I just see him as a tiny piece of waste. Story 6. I told this story once before. I met a woman at a party who gave me a chilling suspicion. She was sociable and easily commanded the attention of every small gathering she was in. She focused on the woes of her job to keep the conversation about her. She was a nurse working in the maternity ward, and she talked about the hours, the pay, and everything else. To change the mood, I asked her what she liked about her job, and she lit up. But what she said didn't involve her coworkers, helping people, or making a difference. Her answer amounted to power. She absolutely glowed as she described how fragile new mothers are and how many subtle things could go wrong. She was proud to say she knew when a mother wasn't going to make it through the night without complications, and how she was the only nurse on the floor who could help the mother. She loved being in control of something so precious and delicate that could not be replaced. I remember feeling deeply uncomfortable by her answer and that smile of hers. I still remember that smile. Others around us at the time noticed it too. Story 7. I am technically still married to one, although we have had no contact for over 3 years. I can name many different things, but I will stick to one in the interest of time. One night, one of many similar nights, we argued and he assaulted me. This generally meant him biting me and choking me. I was at perhaps the lowest point in my life, brainwashed, gaslight, and torn down. So I got up the next morning and decided to make the best of it. I cooked all day while he stayed in the bedroom. I remember listening to music and being in a good mood. I made his favorite dinner and brought it to him in the bedroom. He was looking at his phone. I said, "I made your favorite dinner." And he looked at me and said, "You're so simple." That moment changed my life. It was a gift because I left the next day and never looked back. Story 8. I talked to a man online who, after 2 weeks of conversation, said that sometimes he wanted to kill someone just to see what it felt like. He also said that when he was younger, he had a plan to kill a girl in his class who he thought was annoying and that no one would miss her. Could he have been seeking attention? Maybe. However, I am not taking any chances. I am pretty sure he was literally psychopathic. Story 9. He told me an elaborate story of how his puppy got out, and when he found it, it had been attacked by something, so he had to kill it to end its suffering. Months later, after our relationship ended, I found out he actually just left it in his apartment with no food or water to die. He is now in prison for a crime involving children. It is the closest thing I have encountered that seems psychopathic. Looking back, the list is long and a major reason for much of my trauma. Story 10. They put on a mask all the time. They treat a specific group of people they deem weak horribly while trying to maintain a good image with everyone else. The closest people to them will describe them completely differently than a colleague or a stranger they just met. And before you say everyone is like that, no, this is very different. Story 11. The man had a couple of people kneeling in front of him, praying through him to Jesus or something. He was very skilled at reading and manipulating people, similar to Charles Manson. Story 12. My now deceased husband created scenes as proof of cheating to justify assaulting me, then admitted to planting false evidence. He blatantly lied when telling stories to his friends to appear heroic or funny. He would smugly enjoy when his friends or family experienced misfortune but acted concerned to their faces. The list could go on, but I have no respect for him. Story 13. Oh, this one is easy. I didn't realize he was autistic at first. We actually dated for 3 months, and I thought he might have high-functioning autism or something because I noticed he reacted to things differently. He was really cute and we had a lot of the same hobbies. He liked to climb, so I kind of ignored it, But the longer we were together, I noticed little things like he would pretend to be upset when he thought he was supposed to be. He knew it was an upsetting situation, but only when he realized I or others noticed would he have tears or act sad. He hit a wolf one time when we were on the way to a camping spot in northern Idaho. That was when I really saw it. He took a life and didn't even react. I know some people don't think animals are important, but he didn't even swerve the car or react at all. He said the wolf should have known better than to cross the road. And I cried because, to me, hitting a wolf was traumatic, even though I wasn't driving. Wolves are beautiful creatures, and he looked right at me, stone cold, and said, "You are ruining my weekend by crying. I need you to stop right now." I broke up with him as soon as we got home. I was too afraid to do it in the woods. Story 14. Psychiatrist here. I have met several men with true antisocial personality disorder through my work. No women yet, and it is truly unsettling. Some of their earliest diagnostic behaviors include killing animals as children, although it often progresses to violence toward other people. I will keep the details vague for anonymity. There is often a legal history for those who make it to the inpatient unit, but many of these people in the general public can be extremely charismatic and successful. Story 15. Everything is a lie. They lie to themselves, and the grandiose facade is so complex and deeply rooted in them that you believe it too at first. Their words do not align with their actions or reality. Everything is a way to make themselves look better than everyone else or to put others down and elevate themselves. They view people as a means to an end. They can be extremely charming, outgoing, and fun on the surface, but there is literally no depth beyond that. It is quite sad when I realized this. They know how to reel people in, tell them what they want to hear, and sell this image of themselves. Story 16. I work at a residential psychiatric unit. A man lives there who was found not guilty by reason of insanity for killing a family member 20 years ago. Supposedly cured of his psychosis, he was allowed to step down. The day he came, he was so superficial, scripted, and fake charming that I thought he was a psychopath who convinced everyone he had weed-induced psychosis. Story 17. They are incredibly selfish, but they do not make you feel they are being selfish. Instead, you eventually see they do not care about you, and when they do nice things, it is actually for themselves more than for you. You are easily ignored when you have no value left for them. I suppose that some of these people are good in that they can move on from you, and you can completely forget about them even though you are related. Story 18. I used to work as a mental health nurse and saw people with diagnosed psychopathic traits. What struck me were their eyes. They could have the most brilliant, dazzling smile and a contagious laugh, but their eyes were flat, empty, and lifeless. Sent chills down my spine every time. Story 19. This person has not been diagnosed, but I strongly suspect she is. She can be very charming superficially, good at luring people in, and very believable when spinning a story to get people to side with her and believe what she is saying. She has a very limited emotional range. It is just fake happiness or contentment and rage. There is nothing in between. She can also fake cry on command, which I find very disturbing. She does this to the police whenever her partner and she have had a domestic violence incident. I usually believe most women when they say they are victims, but not her. She is cunning and malicious. She has gotten away with her behavior her whole life, and I do not see it changing. She knows how to manipulate people into bowing to her demands, and if they do not, she flies into a rage where she attempts to physically harm them. Also, if you do not side with her, you are against her, and she will launch a campaign to smear your name and reputation. Story 20. I like to think I am pretty good at reading people, but they would sometimes stare at me when we were in bed together. I would simultaneously feel like they cared for me and that they were about to attack me at the same time. I could never fully read the look behind their eyes. It ebbed and flowed between love and hate. It created a push and pull in my gut where I was drawn to them but afraid of them. I started to catch lies. I watched their movements change when no one was looking. Every word was calculated to manipulate someone or something. Their emotions mimicked others rather than their own. I got out before they hurt me and, in the process, found out what they had done to many others. If you are reading this, you and your sibling should be in jail. Both of you should play in traffic. Story 21. I lived for a few years in a state mental hospital where I shared a ward with one patient. She openly said to me that she was a diagnosed psychopath, but in reality, that is not a diagnostic term. She most likely was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. She would say or do anything as a means to an end. If she wanted something, she would go for it: relationships, sex, cigarettes, clothes, food. Everybody and everything was dispensable to get what she wanted, often at a moment's notice. Many of the patients had been used by her at some point for something. Another troubling behavior was that she would self-harm by swallowing objects. She had many deep scars on her stomach from surgical removals of potentially deadly items. I watched her swallow long wires she had dug out from the patient phone, and she once swallowed the batteries from my CD player when I was not looking. Story 22. Extremely manipulative and self-serving, he could spin a story any which way to get what he wanted and make people very loyal to him. He was smart, adaptable, and could play almost anything to his favor. Looking back, I think it was the only thing that really excited him. He pathologically lied as if it were a game, even about mundane matters. He would lie to create drama or pity for himself when needed. He flew women in from all over the world, telling each he was in love with them. He would drop one at the airport and head to the next gate to pick up another. He loved gaining women's trust, considering it a victory to get someone to leave their partner. He would discard people as if they were nothing afterward. His entire life was a lie, and I'm sure he is still causing mayhem in the lives of others, particularly brunette women. Story 23. I am diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, commonly known as psychopathy. The way to recognize a psychopath is in the details of what they tell you. People with antisocial personality disorder like to come up with elaborate lies to paint themselves in certain lights. You might not focus on the details because you trust someone, but you need to do that when someone has antisocial personality disorder. The tiny details will be inconsistent or will not make sense. Focus on them and ask the psychopath to explain. Story 24. He was charming the first 2 years, but once we got engaged, he became controlling. He controlled all my money, friends, and time outside of the apartment. It took a physical altercation, which I successfully defended myself against, to escape. He had everything from me, possession-wise and socially. It happened so fast. When I got away a few years later and he served a week in jail and attended anger management classes, I saw him again. He smiled and approached me as if nothing had happened. I firmly looked him in the eyes at a public Panera Bread and said, "Nope," then left. He did not follow me. That was years ago. Story 25. My mother is very good at hiding herself. She is charming, smart, and pretty. Appearances are the most important thing to her. I am her oldest child, so I received the most abuse. We are 3 daughters, all smart, never got into trouble, and never did drugs. Yet she loved to make up stories about us to other adults about how bad we were, right in front of us. I honestly don't know why. Wouldn't you want people to know your kids are great? It got to the point where we would call her out to her face while she told her stories. She also hates my husband just because we are high school sweethearts, and I quote, "He is a lower class than we are." She acts sweet around extended family, and no one really sees who she truly is. We are low contact now because of her hatred of my husband and the horrible things she has done to him. I have started to tell a select few extended family members who she really is. I am tired of everyone telling me how amazing my mother is. No, she is not. If she were not married to my dad, I would never speak to her again. I know this is late to the thread, but it felt good to get it out there. Story 26. I fell in love with a man who did a lot of extreme sports which were dangerous all the time. I experienced a seriously traumatic event on my way to meet him for vacation. He had been very charming and made many grand romantic gestures back then. He impulsively got us tickets for a cruise. I arrived in town a day before him to visit family. I went out with friends the night before he arrived, but things went very wrong. When he got off the plane, he found out that I had been attacked. Instead of coming to me at the police station, he told me I should have fought harder and that I had ruined his vacation. He went on the cruise without me, went straight to the ship, and did not even bother to see me. This broke my heart during one of the lowest moments of my life. When we talked about it later, I told him I had noticed his lack of empathy, thrill-seeking, and impulsive behavior. I had also noticed that he was always seeming very happy. He looked at me without a mask for a moment and told me I was very observant. It was chilling. He could move so easily from this charming man who seemed almost selfless to someone I did not recognize. Story 27. It ran in his family, and he was always worried I would find out what he would become one day, but he already was because he was so cruel. Every plan to help or impress me had an ulterior motive of purposely making me insecure or diminishing me in some way. He also thought killing pets was no big deal, and he always tried to tower over me and pretend to be angry to intimidate me. Story 28. You realize eventually that they have been lying to you during every conversation, and when they let the mask slip, you understand that you never should have given them your home address. Story 29. I was told before meeting them that they were diagnosed with psychopathy. They talked to someone else, but it was like seeing through glass. The person was there, but there was no substance. The words and mannerisms were right, but there was no personality or source. It is hard to explain. Story 30. I think for me it was how charming, outgoing, and kind he was to others. One time we went down to the woods by our houses, and I found a wild rabbit with a bite mark. It was still alive. I picked it up and tried to wrap my sweater around it. During this, I kept the rabbit on the floor on top of my bag, and he shot it dead right there in front of me while I was trying to save it. He thought it was the funniest thing ever, and that was the day I decided to leave. Story 31. I am a storm chaser. In 2011, I was with a chase group that got extremely close to the very deadly Joplin tornado. It was a very sobering event. Several days later, I was speaking to another member of the group who said the best part of the trip was seeing the town get destroyed. He also cheered while watching a different tornado hit a house. Even more shocking, his wife cheered as well. Two psychopaths, and they found each other. Story 32. Watching them learn how to mimic genuine empathy and then weaponize it. Just this one person, fortunately. Story 33. They come with a superficial charm that can be easy to fall for at first and are often master manipulators. They will inflict harm on others with no guilt or remorse. They are very goal-oriented and will go to great lengths to achieve their goals. They can be very cold and calculated, easily blending in and wearing multiple masks. Once you spend time with them, you see something is missing deep down inside. Story 34. The sociopath stare is real and happens when you say no or try to enforce a boundary. It is really alarming. Their whole face changes. I get shivers just thinking about it. Story 35. I work in a prison and have dealt with literal psychopaths diagnosed by professionals. The best way I can describe it, coming from someone who knew what they were facing, is that there is something missing in their brain. You can see it in their eyes, there is a void behind them. When they talk to you, it feels like a big game. I'm not just talking about a lack of empathy, which they do have, but an emptiness that is unnatural. Inmates play games like lying, manipulating, or playing dumb to see what, it is part of their world. However, with psychopaths, there is a lot of deliberation and measuring in their interactions that does not exist with regular inmates. They are sizing you up, and you have to be very aware of what they are doing. You must go along with it while sticking to policy, procedure, and your job. They love control and try to gain some of it through you, and you must not allow that. Story 36. If you are lucky, they leave you alone. If not, you are like me and stuck. I swear, he literally just talks to see what lies his people will believe. He is always the victim and never responsible for his own behavior. I started realizing this when he mocked my empathy for others but seemed completely devoid of it toward me in private and actively tried to avoid showing it. It is pretty wild. You have a conversation with someone showing sympathy and empathy, and then you hear it coming out of their mouth as if it were their words later, just paraphrased, being used on another person. It is strange. It is like they have to copy others' emotions. They really are vibe thieves. I often wonder if you were to hold a fake funeral but pretended it was real for one of them, having everyone else laughing and being jovial, would they mock that too? Would they follow the room's vibe? Story 37. Dead eyes. Not tired, blank, or dissociated eyes, but just nothing there. Nothing behind their eyes at all. Not a spark of humanity. Not even a glimmer of malicious or ill intent. Just completely dead. It was a group introduction. I introduced myself, not to seem rude, and promptly went to another room. Story 38. He told me he killed a puppy once just to see what it was like. I knew things were not right based on other things he said, but that was the final straw. Story 39. They told me they did not see people as individuals, proven by the fact they took everything they could from someone before abandoning them. They crashed my car and left. Charming though, kinda scary. Story 40. This was about 12 years ago. I may have met more, but I know I have seen one who received a diagnosis. He came in with handcuffs on, and the resident psychiatrist said he was actually diagnosed about 5 years ago. I saw him from a distance and had no interaction with him. He had a history of violent crime and was recently released after serving time. I think he had been out about 6 months and had just attempted to murder a child, but the child survived because a parent caught him in the act and beat him badly. He was talking amiably with a detective as if the handcuffs on his wrists were not even there. We were all very concerned because the detective seemed charmed by him and was matching his light, friendly energy. Story 41. My mom made everyone think she was the best mom in the world. My classmates would say, "Your mom is so cool. She's great." But behind closed doors, she would sit me down every night for up to 4 hours, while she explained what a terrible person I was while reading scripture. She also didn't like our fish tank, so she put a towel over it and waited for the fish to die. Story 42. I was in a laboratory group with a person who dressed up as Batman and killed a number of people in a movie theater. I never realized it at the time. He was ineffective as a scientist and did not make a single contribution throughout the semester. It got to the point where 2 of us in the 4-person group reported the issue to the professor. He would just stare blankly when I expressed frustration about his lack of effort. I was patient initially, but it was not due to shyness or incompetence. He was simply lost in his own world, and nothing else mattered to him. Since then, I have encountered a few more individuals with psychopathic tendencies and violent behavior. When they view a person as an object, it is like being ignored by an unfeeling entity. They do not see others as more than physical beings. This was in a class where we drilled holes in rat heads to study brain control, so his chosen field of study was not helping his condition. Story 43. I used to work across the road from a state mental health hospital at a large retail store. They treated all types of mental illness, including psychopaths and the criminally insane. Those who were allowed to leave on a day pass would come either on their own, which was rare, or with caseworkers to do shopping. This did not include prisoners, but sometimes we would get patients who acted unusual. I interacted with a few. For me, the usual giveaway was the sticker name tag. However, some did not wear them or sometimes escaped and wandered over on their own. For me, it was their laugh. They tended to laugh a lot, but only at things they themselves had said or caused. Their laugh was an almost naughty child snicker, as if they thought they were the cleverest person in the room. I cannot say if this was a medication side effect, since I assumed all those I interacted with were medicated, but that was how I recognized it. Another way was that they seemed to have a momentary delay in replying, as if they were referring to a script or buffering. This might have been caused by medication slowing cognitive processing, but it was a sign for me. Usually, after noticing these signs, their caseworker would appear and direct them back across the road. Story 44. I would never have been able to tell through my interactions with him, and I cannot say for certain that he had psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder. I was just a contractor working on his house for an extended period. When I had to go into his casita office to test a line, he had a shelf full of books on psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder, including titles like Understanding Antisocial Personality Disorder and Living with Antisocial Personality Disorder, all alongside a considerable arsenal, though he likely did not need guns. He looked like if Terry Crews could eat Terry Crews for breakfast. Story 45. My ex bit my ear off and never apologized, despite being given plenty of chances. He then used every excuse to explain away what he did, claiming it was something I did wrong. Story 46. Former manager. I realized that he would literally work me to death, and his only problem with that would be finding a replacement. 17 people in that company left within 6 months of him joining. People were crying at their desks. He implemented a ban on the development team communicating with the marketing team. He secretly had our IT systems modified so he could read our emails and use that to attack us. Imagine feeling like someone's knee is on your throat all day, every day. That struggle to breathe, the weight crushing you. Several of us developed anxiety and depression as a result of working under him. There was a time after a group of us had quit that we started discussing retaliation. Nobody said the actual words, but we all knew what we meant. Even though I very much wanted retaliation too, I convinced them that our best retaliation was to move on and be successful. As it happens, 13 years later, I'm working with two of the same colleagues, and we're absolutely smashing it, working in a great place with great conditions. But I still have to convince myself not to find him and retaliate. Story 47. I am not a specialist and fully aware that antisocial personality disorder cannot be diagnosed in a minor. However, I work with children with behavioral issues and encountered a highly intelligent preteen with zero empathy. It was quite unsettling. He would utter the most horrific personal insults with a near-reptilian look and, when facing consequences, merely lament that he would be bored during time out. I consulted with the police when he started sending chat messages of himself torturing his pets as an intimidation tactic. Story 48. They smile when seeing suffering, especially when they are causing it. It gives them satisfaction to have power over others. Story 49. When I went to therapy after dating Satan, my therapist looked at me one day in a session and said, "So, you know you dated a psychopath, right? Everything you're saying is actual psychotic behavior and none of this is normal." That's when I knew. They have an amazing way of masquerading through life. Story 50. When the boss I was working for yelled at an employee, he took the dental tray of the teeth she was working on, shouted at the top of his lungs, and launched it 35 feet across the room until it hit a wall and broke apart at maximum velocity. Meanwhile, the three co-workers at their stations were shaking and trembling. One was even trying to hold back tears and not hyperventilate. Then he turned calmly and looked at me as I walked up, witnessing all of this, and said calmly, "How's your day going? Did you need me for something?" I said I was leaving early for the day and never went back. Story 51. Antisocial personality disorder diagnosis. Psychopathy is not a diagnosable disorder on its own in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. Instead, it is a possible feature of antisocial personality disorder. Story 52. He was my friend in high school. He literally saw himself as an apex predator. He was kind of a weird guy in general, but it was high school, we were all a little weird. He was one of the most selfish people I have ever met and would creep out any girl. We got near. He always made jokes about how he could just kill someone if he wanted to, and they would not be able to do anything about it. Anytime he tried to be emotional with someone, it always felt really fake and forced, typically an attempt at manipulation. Honestly, he was a fun guy to talk to when we talked about video games and such, but being a teenager, I completely ignored many red flags. It was not until college, when I was doing a research paper on psychopathy, that I had a moment of realization. Story 53. Very friendly, people-pleaser type guy I worked with always seemed low-key and gave me the creeps because way back on his social media, he had pictures that made him appear to have a completely different personality, living in a different city with different people. It made me feel like he was faking everything. If you saw him when he was drunk or high enough, his mask would slip, and the only discernible emotion on his face, if not blank, was seething rage. After I noticed this, I started telling people I thought he was a closeted psychopath. He ended up getting involved with one of our coworkers and physically assaulting her. Called it. Story 54. Not a psychologist, but my cousin enjoyed humiliating other children when he was just a child. As a late teenager and young adult, he clipped a tattoo out of his ex-girlfriend's skin with a nail clipper. He had many pet snakes and really enjoyed feeding them. He even went as far as buying pet rabbits and pretending to provide them a forever home, while planning to feed them to the snakes. He laughed about a man cuddling with the rabbits the last time. He kept rats, some as pets and some to feed the snakes. He bullied a mother rat if she tried to get away from her babies for a moment and punched the poor animal, which eventually died. He had another mother rat who had to feed more than 20 babies, half of which were not hers. He ended up letting his girlfriend bottle feed the rats. His little brother confessed that at some point, he had 5 cats in his room and let them get pregnant all the time. If he could not sell the kittens, he would just kill them. I once planned to buy a beautiful puppy. My grandparents lost their minds over it because it was a large breed with no papers. They said if it was not from a good breeder, it was basically a dangerous animal and talked me out of it. However, I had already taken a picture of the puppy about 10 years ago. Recently, I recognized the picture I took on an online marketplace. My cousin is still trying to scam people using that picture. I know it was him because he used his father's account. There are many other examples. My family always knew. I used to tell them it was just a phase and he would get over it, and not to be so dramatic about their own cousin. But they were right. He is an adult now. Story 55. We were asked to cut open a baby bird and inspect each organ. We were young children, but even at that age, I knew this was strange to do. There was also a time when he hit the back of my head with a large metal pole in front of my parents. I was knocked down. He showed no remorse at all. I have no idea where he is now. Story 56. When he got hard every time I cried. My lupus became very severe. It was so bad that I had to undergo chemotherapy and lost a dangerous amount of weight. My cries of pain would make his penis hard. I was insecure and didn't think anyone else would ever love me. So I convinced myself that it was flattering. I wish I could go back and hit my past self with a frying pan. Story 57. I don't know if he was, but I knew a man who killed 26 people. He was always happy, like a golden retriever happy. He had a nice wife, 2 children, and a happy marriage. I don't know what you call that, but it was something. Story 58. My mother is one. I'm going to be honest with you. For the most part, you won't know they are a psychopath because on the outside they are mostly unremarkable and average a lot of the time. They will be polite, friendly, or even outgoing and charming. For the most part, interacting with them is the same as anyone else. It took me a long time to understand psychopathy, not the way it is portrayed on television and in crime documentaries. You're usually dealing with someone mentally exhausting, and over time it wears you down. My mother has stolen my medication and is a functioning drug addict that no one would suspect. However, behind the scenes, there is a feeling of entitlement. To continuously exploit your children and steal from them. Imagine having a parent with zero loyalty to you, constantly making you feel like all interactions are mental chess, and having to ensure they are not scheming against you or putting you in an unsafe situation. In the end, you wonder if you upset them, usually for something they did that you are reacting to. My mother's horrible behavior and abuse were so normalized to me it took a lot of therapy and understanding to see that every diabolical thing done was a calculated move, and to learn how to counteract or avoid the impact. I have to take this person to court because my reputation was destroyed by what they did while defrauding me. You know how well she sleeps at night? Like a baby. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Story 59. I was raised by one, a sadistic monster. Not only a child sexual abuse material offender with friends like him, his degree was in film and video production, but also a master at manipulation and actual true gaslighting. Strangulation and drowning were forms of discipline. He had the shark eyes people talk about with psychopathic individuals and was literally only happy when me, my mother, or my little sister were sad or terrified. He ruined things for the fun of it and made me think I was crazy and a bad daughter to the point my first genuine suicide attempt was at 6 years old. It was the 1990s and my mother just dealt with it for years because she was an alcoholic and so used to the violence, fear, and chance of dying from him before I was even born that she couldn't leave. I legitimately have that disorder every person on social media thinks is trendy to play dress up with and pretend to be different people. There's nothing like that, and it's ruining my adult life. I could write a full dissertation about the man, my father, who ruined my life. I am 35 now and attend trauma therapy 3 days a week. I am still panic attack level afraid of the dumbest things and hate myself because he took any bit of self-esteem or self-worth I could have developed as a child and essentially programmed my brain to self-destruct. I am not allowed to love or even like myself. I don't know how to trust or feel safe. I feel like a lost child 80% of the time. It's so messed up. The American court system failed me too when I finally reported in my 20s. They said, look at all the times I've tried to hurt myself as a child or attempted suicide. His lawyer used the fact that he made me genuinely want, need, and repeatedly attempt to end my life from age 6 to 20 as proof I was lying. Okay, I'm done. Sorry, this one is incredibly personal for me. In case you're wondering, he was bailed out on $500,000 by his wealthy sister 1 year into being incarcerated and walks free to this day. Psychopaths are absolutely the closest thing to actual demons walking this earth. Story 60. My ex-best friend watched me suffer abuse from my husband for 10 years. Sexual assault, starvation, car keys stolen so I couldn't leave, and more. She helped me through labor with my son and the postpartum period when my husband banished me to a couch for 4 months. Because the baby was disrupting his sleep, and I became depressed. She helped me leave, supported me while I got on my feet and got my first job at 29, not even knowing how to pay a bill. Threw me a party when my divorce was finally over, which took 3 years. This past March, I found out they had been dating for at least a month behind my back. She told me people can change and he is better to her than he was to me. When I cut contact with her, she still stalks and harasses me. I am working on getting my order of protection from her. She tells everyone that I am a monster for not supporting them. They made the relationship official online on my birthday after not posting a single thing about their relationship for 6 months. Then she dressed up like a strange version of me and took photos with him and my son. Psychopath. Story 61. My brother and I had a physical fight in college. In the heat of it, I grabbed his necklace. He immediately stopped and calmly said, "You need to pay for that." It was as if the fight had been an act. A decade later, I tried helping him with an alternative therapy called biofeedback. The goal of the therapy is to learn how to meditate. It is done by playing a Pac-Man game. The difference is that Pac-Man moves based on your brain waves. Wires are attached to your forehead to control its movement on a computer screen. For most people, Pac-Man moves naturally without effort. With my brother, he surprised the assistant by making Pac-Man stop moving. My brother calls this a state where he deeply does not care. It is like when Norman Bates has a fly on his face and he is completely unbothered by it. It was chilling. Story 62. I will come back to this to see if there is anything interesting from people who have met actual diagnosed psychopaths. Right now, it is just a group of people talking about how much they hate their ex. Boring. Story 63. Had a Bumble date set up once and met the man at the pub. Nice pub, nice weather, decent atmosphere and beer, all the right components for a good date. He arrived, sat down, and we ordered at the table. The waitress brought the drinks and I thanked her. He just looked at her, expressionless, for quite some time. She and I both noticed the awkwardness, and she glanced at me and then looked away. That was the first interaction that felt off, and it was the very first interaction. Nevertheless, I am a social and sociable person, so I pressed on, making light conversation and trying to establish some sort of connection, however it manifested. He was like chewing a house brick. Then it started raining. His flat was just down the road, so he asked if I wanted to go there to continue drinking and chatting. By this time, I had realized what I was dealing with and felt confident I could handle myself if things went wrong. Foolish, I know, but I'm curious. We settled on the sofa with a wine in hand. What I did not know was that his glass actually contained water at this point. An hour or so passed, and I was tired, drunk, and bored of my experiment. Then, out of nowhere, he asked if I wanted to have sex. I said no, picked up my bag, and moved to leave. All the energy suddenly left the room, and I felt a massive drop in my stomach. For a man with blue eyes, his eyes looked almost black, as if his pupils had fully dilated. I have since read about the appearance of the eyes in relation to psychological expressions, and there are many accounts of people's eyes changing during various psychological states. I know from my own bipolar disorder how my eyes change. Maybe it takes one to know one, but as soon as he dropped all masking, the atmosphere crackled and shifted the way I felt. Everything inside me immediately alerted, and in an instant, I was running down the stairs and out into rainy Clapham. I was so relieved. My heart only restarted once I hit the pavement. Since then, I have studied psychology at university and other institutions in my pursuit of becoming a therapist, and I am grateful for this experience because it taught me not to take risks like that. In hindsight, with my knowledge, I would say he definitely displayed the majority of traits necessary for a diagnosis of sociopathy or psychopathy. I cannot diagnose for sure, but I would advise a client to seek further evaluation if they presented like that man. They are people with no empathy, no soul. They are cold. Story 64. It is something about the eyes and the micro-expressions. I just get a vibe from them. I am autistic and have spent more than 20 years studying and watching people, so I am hyper-aware and have fairly decent pattern recognition in general. There have been a couple of people who flew under my radar initially but caused intense anxiety to be around. The veil always lifts eventually. Story 65. Am I the only one who is noticing that most of these comments are describing narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder? Many of these stories are very horrible, but most of them are not actually describing a psychopath. Some of them are even describing things that are clearly not psychopathy. Story 66. A bunch of people who have no idea how a person with actual antisocial personality disorder acts, and just have difficult exes or family members. Someone being incredibly cruel, selfish, and unempathic who masks their cruelty outside the house does not make them a psychopath. Otherwise, half of the population would be psychopaths. It is a rare diagnosis. I am sorry, but your ex is not one. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.